Unexpected details from the talks. Budanov bent Putin to his will, and Moscow is already discussing a ceasefire with Ukraine.
As you know, the talks lasted 2 days. They were tough, but productive.
Bombshell statement from Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Ukraine may be willing to leave Donbass to end the war, but on one condition.
Zelenskyy named the condition under which Ukraine would discuss withdrawing troops from Donbass.
Territory no longer matters. Moscow shifts its rhetoric and prepares Russians for the end of the so-called special military operation.
If we didn't manage to push forward in parts of Ukraine and couldn't bring certain territories back to their historic homeland, then we should instead bring the people back to that homeland on a much larger scale.
Thanks for the likes and comments, everyone. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming videos.
It's clear we had to come to these talks at the request of the American side. It was our gesture of goodwill. But in my opinion, the Europeans showed open contempt by making our delegation fly 8 hours to Geneva, having to go around all those countries just to enter through Italy. What exactly are those pathetic European beggars trying to prove? And I really liked the furious hysteria in the West over the fact that Vladimir Medinsky is leading the Russian delegation. They're afraid of every word he says.
Any step that helps move things toward a peace settlement is important.
Seeing that both sides are fatigued by the conflict and understanding that a reset is needed, anything is possible. That's why these talks shouldn't be dismissed. They could lead to an unexpected peace.
The talks between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States and Switzerland have ended, but sensational new details are only now beginning to emerge. Significant progress is already being reported on the military track of the settlement process, something that is hard not to welcome. As we've just heard from various representatives of Putin's regime, even they admit the negotiations marked an important step toward peace. At first, however, Russians were apparently upset that their delegation had to fly a full 8 or 9 hours to Geneva instead of the usual 3 or 4, since most countries in the civilized world simply didn't want to see the Russian tricolor in their airspace. Yet despite what they saw as humiliation, the dialogue between the sides turned out to be quite constructive. After 2 days of discussions, the head of the Russian delegation and part-time clown and pseudo-historian Medinsky addressed the press. This time he was brief. With a somber look on his face, he simply said the talks were tough but professional.
As you know, the talks lasted 2 days, long sessions yesterday in different formats, and about 2 hours again today. They were tough but professional. The next meeting will take place soon. That's all we have to say. Thank you.
Vladimir Rostislavovich, could you tell us what issues were discussed? Security, territories, humanitarian matters?
Were any historical lessons brought up at all?
Even Russian propagandists themselves mock this character for the pseudo-historical nonsense he delivers instead of anything constructive, which shows he isn't taken seriously there. So it's hardly surprising that the head of the Ukrainian president's office, Kirilo Budanov, reportedly put him in his place during the talks. Essentially, every claim Medinsky tried to push was dismantled point by point, which, according to insiders familiar with the negotiations, infuriated the head of the Russian delegation. Judging by Medinsky's unusually brief press conference and his expression, that leak seems close to the truth. Budanov himself also officially stated that the talks were extremely important for ending the war. That's not surprising, since the sides discussed there a ceasefire in concrete terms and ways to monitor it, and they reportedly reached agreement on almost everything. Zelenskyy personally confirmed this.
Our negotiating team has briefed me. As for the substance of the talks, there are 2 main tracks: military and political. I want to emphasize that all 3 sides were very constructive on the military track. The military understands how to monitor a ceasefire and the end of the war, provided there is political will. They have reached agreement on almost everything there. Monitoring will definitely involve the American side. I see this as a constructive signal. All other details, the technical aspects of monitoring, General Hanatov will report to me in greater detail after his return. As for the political component, these are sensitive issues you already know about: Eastern Ukraine and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. We see there is groundwork, but the positions still differ. The negotiations themselves were not easy. The negotiating team will also present all these nuances to me. In other words, I heard progress on the military track. On the political track, there was dialogue. They agreed to continue. I did not hear the same level of progress as on the military side. But again, the negotiating team said they could not report everything to me over the phone, so we expect a detailed briefing once our delegation returns.
And that means Budanov essentially pushed Russia into agreeing to a ceasefire. They didn't start discussing this out of goodwill, especially considering that just 6 months ago they wouldn't even think about it. And since these were negotiations, Kyiv also said it was ready to make concessions on the territorial issue. The president of Ukraine stated that Kyiv could consider withdrawing Ukrainian troops from Donbas, but only on one condition, that Russia take fully mirror steps in return.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said he is ready to discuss withdrawing Ukrainian forces from part of the Donetsk region, but urged Moscow to pull its troops back by an equivalent distance. He said this in an interview with Axios. Zelenskyy rejected Moscow's sovereignty claims over the region and stressed that a unilateral Ukrainian withdrawal from Donbas would not be accepted by Ukrainian society. At the same time, he suggested that if an agreement formalizes the current line of contact, Ukrainians could support such an option in a referendum. I think that if the document states that we remain where we are along the line of contact, people will support it in a referendum. That's my opinion, the Ukrainian president said.
This was also discussed in Geneva, where cautious progress was made. Moscow has generally grown more accommodating amid the end of winter and setbacks on the front line. Its public rhetoric is changing before our eyes. Just on days, Russian State Duma Deputy Konstantin Zatulin, essentially a representative of Putin's regime, openly said Russia may fail to capture all the territories it wants in Ukraine and should now focus on what comes after the so-called special military operation, rather than trying to seize yet another forester's hut in eastern Ukraine at the cost of thousands of its soldiers.
What will happen, and what kind of Ukraine will remain on the political map afterward? Can we really imagine a Ukraine where the Russian people, the Russian language, and the Russian Orthodox Church are still being repressed? If that's the case, then those are questions that, in my view, matter far more, and ones that concern us as well. If in certain parts of Ukraine we didn't manage to advance, and didn't manage to bring those territories back to their historic homeland, then we should instead bring people from Ukraine back to that historic homeland on an ever larger scale, and we need to review our own procedures to make that possible. The more people from Ukraine come to us rather than to the West, the more they will take part in our future life. We know that today the route to the West for Ukrainians is relatively open despite all of Zelensky's measures, while the route to Russia runs only through Sheremetyevo Airport. Of course, during wartime, security must come first, but it must not become an obstacle. We must not miss the forest for the trees, and it should not prevent more and more people from crossing over to our side. After all, these are our people, and if for a time they have fallen under someone else's influence or found themselves in a country that is foreign in its very foundations, then we should do everything possible to help as many of them as we can return.
Such remarks from an official representative of Putin's regime suggest Russia's economic crisis is worsening, while social tensions are also rising, with people now openly speaking on camera about how hard life has become as Putin continues the war against Ukraine.
Everything is rising. Inflation, problems, hardship. We all need to understand what's happening.
Who's to blame? The authorities, of course. Who's responsible for everything? The authorities, the government, and the president.
Even though our country produces so much and is supposed to be a leading nation, we export our resources, yet you can see the hole we've ended up in.
Corruption, corruption, and corruption again. Our country's always been famous for fools and bad roads. The roads have been fixed. Now it's time to deal with the fools.
Who do we have to thank for utility bills shooting up like this?
Who do we think? Who's responsible? Who's running all this? That's it. And it's not just utilities, it's food too. Even bread, forgive me, has gone up, not to mention vodka. Fruit, vegetables, everything's gotten more expensive.
Have you noticed utility rates going up?
This has been going on for years.
More than noticed.
How much have they gone up?
Definitely above official inflation, around 15% or more.
What do you think caused such a jump in prices?
Probably because of the tense international situation and sanctions. I also think there are internal problems, rising fuel prices, and likely some corruption in the utility sector as well.
It's just a hand-to-mouth existence.
Who do you think we have to thank for this?
I think you already know the answer.
And that's it for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already.